The story of Jacob, Leah, Rachel, and his encounter with Esau is a rich narrative filled with lessons on love, deceit, perseverance, reconciliation, and God's faithfulness. Spanning Genesis chapters 29 to 33, this story takes us on Jacob's journey of transformation from a cunning trickster to a man deeply reliant on God. This study will explore Jacob's marriages to Leah and Rachel, the dynamics within their family, and the emotional and spiritual lessons drawn from his reconciliation with Esau. Each section will highlight practical applications for modern believers. Jacob's arrival at Laban's house, Genesis chapter 29 verses 1 to 14. After deceiving his brother Esau and fleeing from his home, Jacob sets out on a journey to his uncle Laban's house. During this journey, Jacob experiences God's presence in a dream at Bethel, where God reaffirms the Abrahamic covenant. Genesis chapter 28 verses 10 to 22. This encounter strengthens Jacob's faith and gives him hope for the challenges ahead. Jacob arrives at a well, where he meets Rachel, Laban's daughter. This meeting is marked by emotion, as Jacob immediately recognizes God's guidance in leading him to his family. God directs our steps just as God directed Jacob to Rachel. He directs our steps when we seek His guidance. Trusting God's timing and direction in relationships, career choices, and life decisions brings clarity and purpose. First impressions and intentions mattered. Jacob approached Rachel with kindness and respect. In our interactions with others, first impressions can lay the foundation for meaningful relationships. Jacob falls in love with Rachel and agrees to work for 7 years to marry her. The Bible says, "So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her." Genesis chapter 29 verse 20. However, Laban deceives Jacob by giving him Leah instead of Rachel after the 7 years. Laban's deceit mirrors Jacob's own earlier deceit of his brother Esau. Jacob confronts Laban, and Laban offers Rachel to Jacob in exchange for another 7 years of labor. Jacob reaped what he had sown. Deception creates cycles of mistrust and pain. Honesty in our relationships is crucial. Endurance in service. Jacob worked 14 years for the woman he loved. True love often requires sacrifice, patience, and commitment. God works through imperfections despite human failures and deceit. God's plan continued to unfold in Jacob's life. Similarly, God can use our messy circumstances for His glory. Leah was unloved, yet God opened her womb, and she bore Jacob several sons, including Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Leah's naming of her sons reveals her longing for love and recognition. Rachel, though loved, remained barren for many years. Out of frustration, she gave her maidservant Bilhah to Jacob, resulting in the births of Dan and Naphtali. Leah also gave her maidservant Zilpah, leading to the births of Gad and Asher. Finally, God remembered Rachel, and she gave birth to Joseph. God sees and cares for the unloved. Leah's story reminds us that God sees our pain and meets us in our struggles. Even when others overlook us, God remains attentive to our needs. Comparison breeds discontent. Rachel and Leah's rivalry teaches us the dangers of comparison. Contentment comes from recognizing our worth in God, not from competing with others. God's timing is perfect. Rachel's eventual blessing of a child shows us that God's delays are not His denials. Jacob, through God's guidance, develops a strategy to grow his flocks. Despite Laban's repeated attempts to exploit him, Jacob prospers. Jacob agrees to have only the spotted sheep, and Laban hides the spotted sheep. God causes the sheep to only bear spotted sheep in the future. God tells Jacob to return to his homeland, assuring him of His presence. God rewards faithfulness even when treated unjustly. Jacob remained diligent, and God rewarded his efforts. Faithfulness in our work brings blessings. Trust God in unjust situations. Jacob's story encourages us to trust God when we face unfair treatment. God is our ultimate vindicator. Obedience brings protection. When Jacob obeyed God's call to return home, God protected him and his family. As Jacob approaches Esau, fear grips him. He remembers his past deceit and fears Esau's retaliation. Jacob divides his people and livestock into groups to minimize potential losses. Jacob prays earnestly, acknowledging his fear and asking for God's protection. Genesis chapter 32 verses 9 to 12. His prayer is humble, honest, and rooted in God's promises. Face your fears with faith. Jacob faced his fears through prayer and preparation. We, too, must confront our fears with faith in God's promises. The power of honest prayer. Jacob's prayer teaches us to be honest with God about our fears and to lean on his promises. Jacob spends the night wrestling with a mysterious man, later revealed to be God. Jacob refuses to let go until he receives a blessing. God renames Jacob, Israel, meaning, he who struggles with God. This encounter marks a turning point in Jacob's spiritual life. Transformation comes through surrender. Jacob's wrestling symbolizes our struggles with God. True transformation happens when we surrender to God's will. God honors perseverance. Jacob's persistence in seeking God's blessing is a model for our spiritual lives. Esau runs to meet Jacob, embraces him, and weeps. This powerful moment of reconciliation demonstrates the healing power of forgiveness. Jacob approaches Esau with humility, referring to himself as Esau's servant and bowing before him. The power of forgiveness. Esau's forgiveness is a reminder of the healing and freedom that forgiveness brings. Humility restores relationships. Jacob's humility played a significant role in the reconciliation. Pride often hinders restoration, but humility opens doors for healing. God is faithful in reconciliation. God prepared Esau's heart and guided Jacob's steps, demonstrating his faithfulness in bringing restoration. We must trust God's plan even when circumstances seem unfair or confusing. Trust that God is at work behind the scenes. Be honest and faithful. Deceit has long-term consequences, but integrity brings blessings. Seek reconciliation. Broken relationships can be healed through humility, forgiveness, and God's intervention. We must be persistent in prayer. Jacob's wrestling with God teaches us to persist in prayer and seek his blessing. Embrace transformation. God uses struggles to refine and transform us. Jacob's story is ultimately about God's faithfulness, grace, and transformative power. Despite Jacob's flaws, God fulfills his promises and uses him to build the nation of Israel. Today, we can learn from Jacob's perseverance, Leah's faith, Rachel's patience, and Esau's forgiveness. These timeless lessons remind us that God can redeem our mistakes, heal our relationships, and fulfill his promises in our lives. May we, like Jacob, seek God in every season, surrender to his will, and experience his transformative power in our lives.